I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Do you know the way? No, not the way to San Jose, the way of St. James. I sit down with the stars of a new movie about the famous pilgrimage, Sheen and Emilio Estevez.
When they're introduced, they are non-believers, and yet by the end of the film, we see them humbled.
Plus, it's a big anniversary for Bishop Dimarzio. He'll go into the deep to talk about it.
The program is the gospel itself, but represent it with new zeal, new methods, a new enthusiasm. That's what I'd like to leave as a legacy in the diocese.
And local pilgrims walk the way of St. James in Brooklyn.
To walk is a beautiful way to remind us that our home is not here.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's a film that's been talked about quite a lot, and this weekend it has finally hit the big screen. But it's not a blockbuster with lots of special effects. It's a much more poignant film about a journey of faith, both literal and spiritual. It's called The Way, and it tells the story of a man who puts his life in the U.S. on hold to walk the way of St. James, or El Camino de Santiago, through France and Spain. Now, while walking the Camino, the man gets caught in a terrible storm and dies. His father then travels to France to identify his son's body and bring him home, or so he thinks. What follows is an amazing journey of faith and transformation. The Way stars real-life father and son, Sheen and Emilio Estevez. Earlier this week, I had a chance to see the film and sit down with the film's stars. Gentlemen, first of all, thanks for sitting down with me. I really appreciate your time very much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Having us.
Well, I saw the film yesterday, and I must say I was extremely moved by it in many ways. I mean, it was amazing to me how tragic, yet how funny, yet how just, almost life-changing that the message of this film can be. Doing the line of work that I do, I work in religious media, and there seems to be this distinction between religious films over here and secular mainstream films over here.
Right.
Did you set out to make a religious movie, or is this a particularly religious movie, or did you just say, let's make a film?
Let's make a film on the Camino, and let's see what happens. Let's see where things fall. When we began talking about making this film, the first note I wanted to give my father was, your character's going to be a lapsed Catholic. And there was he just kind of looked at me, and his eyes narrowed, and then the roof kind of went up. And he said, why? And I said, because he needs someplace to go. He needs to have fallen away, had a crisis of his faith, and then we see a conversion of it, or at least a start of a conversion by the end of the film. And that's the same thing with all the characters. We start when they're introduced, they are non-believers, and yet by the end of the film, we see them humbled. We see them one of them brought down to his knees and humbled before God in the cathedral. And these are really powerful images. But I think they wouldn't have been as powerful had we set out to say, you know what, all of these people are a certain way, and they're steeped in dogma, or they're steeped in a particular religion, because none of them would have had a place to go by the end of the film. And I think, there's a message with the Gypsy father in the film where he says, religion has nothing to do with this, nothing at all. It's really about the spiritual, and that's ultimately what connects us.
Right. And that was one of the scenes that I thought was just really moving. Another one was when you had to go in and identify the body. And I understand there's a particularly, I guess, moving part about the way that was shot.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't know it was coming. Thank you very much. Never mind. No, but he set it up so that the audience gets ready for it, as the character does with the sign. When he sees it, his hesitation is expressed in looking at the sign morgue and saying how he's surprised that it's the same word in English, and he's stalling, And I had difficulty with that line. It was the only line I really had difficulty, because the rhythm was kind of off. And he said, yes, because you're off here, and I don't want you balanced here. You're going to get knocked over in just a very short time. And so it allowed me to enter that a spot and be prepared for it, and as well as the audience. So it was a brilliantly conceived moment. He readies us for it, and he had to rein me in. And off camera, I was not looking at him in the body bag. It was his son.
I couldn't direct from inside the bag.
Boy.
It was like inside.
That would be a little difficult.
Right?
Yes.
It's like, so I had to put someone in the bag that would have made sense. We had a dummy standing by, a mannequin.
Yeah.
And I said to my son, I said, if you're okay with this, I'd like for you to get in the bag, and I don't want to tell Grandpa what's coming.
I had no
Right.
idea.
Wow.
And the whole, this whole adventure that has become what it is, the way now, started with his son, my grandson, and my friend Matt Clark. The three of us were trying to make the pilgrimage to Santiago in 2003, and we were trying to do it in 2 weeks because I had to get back to the West Wing. And we rented a car, we were driving it, and we stopped in Burgos, and at a refugio that night during the Pilgrim Supper, Taylor met his future wife, this extraordinary, beautiful young girl who was part of the family that ran this place. Her name is Julia. They're married now. They live in Burgos. So that was the seed that grew into what we're calling now this movie called The Way.
That whole taking a car thing, that's cheating. You're not a true pilgrim.
No, I'm not a true pilgrim. Not even close. No, I long to do it. To really do the pilgrim. My father was a Gallego. He was born about 80 kilometers from Santiago. So I kind of knew about it, and I always had that romantic image that I'll do it someday. And I still do, but I want to do it without a camera, no offense, and without a cell
director?
phone.
Without your son telling you what to do.
I will have the inner direction. Thank you very much.
Right. Well, thank you both, gentlemen, very much for taking some time out. Really appreciate it. The film is great, and it's an honor to meet you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And when I say an honor to meet both those guys, I really, really mean that. And you could kind of tell there, but they're just very easygoing. It was no big deal to sit down and talk to them. It was just like I could have a cup of coffee. They're extremely, extremely gracious human beings. Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez there. Of course, Emilio Estevez, as you kind of got the idea, also wrote and directed this film. And be sure and check out The Way. It is in theaters right now. Well, stay with us. The Obama administration steps into the fray on Alabama's immigration law. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, it is the Way of St. James. This time, it's in our backyard. First, though, let's have a look at the day's headlines. The Obama administration has asked an appeals court to block enforcement of Alabama's tough new immigration law. The administration says that law, considered the toughest in the nation, invites discrimination against people born outside the U.S. Under the law, police have the right to question people they suspect of not being in the country legally, and officials can check the status of public school students. Meanwhile, as we head into the Columbus Day weekend here, social conservatives have converged on Washington for the annual Values Voters Summit. Among the featured speakers, Republican presidential candidates Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, Rick Perry, and Mitt Romney. Meanwhile, Virginia Congressman Eric Cantor told summit attendees that he is, quote, increasingly concerned by the Occupy Wall Street demonstrations here in New York, which have also spread to other parts of the country. A big announcement from a Catholic organization in Illinois. Catholic Charities of Peoria says it is withdrawing from state-funded social services. Peoria Bishop Daniel Jenke says that the partnership between the church and the state of Illinois is no longer a viable option. At issue is a new measure that went into effect in June that gives couples in civil unions most of the same rights as married couples. The law would require Catholic Charities to grant adoptions to unmarried couples and place foster children with those couples, which goes against church teaching. Meanwhile, a Canada-based Catholic maternal health group says it has repeatedly been denied government funding because it is, quote, too Catholic. The group Matter Care International tells Catholic News Agency that it is being denied funding because of the church's stance against abortion and contraception. Matter Care works to reduce the number of preventable maternal deaths in developing countries. At the same time, groups that provide abortion and contraception, including Planned Parenthood, have received funding. A religious order in Canada, meantime, paying out millions of dollars to settle a class action lawsuit over sex abuse allegations. The Congregation of Holy Cross has issued a formal apology and is paying $17 million to settle a suit alleging abuse at 3 schools in Quebec. The abuse is said to have occurred between 1950 and 2001. The bishops of England and Wales are speaking out against Prime Minister David Cameron's support of same-sex marriage. Speaking at the UK Conservative Party conference, Cameron said same-sex marriage is about equality, but it's also about something else, commitment. Archbishop Peter Smith says marriage by its nature is between a man and a woman and that redefining it cannot be right. Bishop Kieran Conry says that Cameron will not be given an easy ride on the issue. Well, meanwhile, the head of the Anglican Communion is heading to Zimbabwe to attempt to heal a rift in his church. Archbishop Rowan Williams has asked to meet with Zimbabwe's president, Robert Mugabe. Reports say that Anglicans faithful to their worldwide church have been arrested, beaten, and locked out of churches. Meanwhile, there are reports that a breakaway faction of Anglicans has been able to seize church property with the help of government police. The leader of the breakaway group says homosexual priests and church members have gained too much influence in the Anglican Church. The Vatican's daily newspaper is remembering Apple co-founder Steve Jobs as a visionary who united technology and art. L'Osservatore Romano calling Jobs a leader of the Silicon Valley revolution. The paper also said that his, quote, genius creations remain with us. Jobs died on Wednesday. He was just 56 years old. Well, meanwhile, a city in Pope John Paul's home country has thrown its hat into the ring to host a future World Youth Day. We'll get details from Rome Reports.
According to the Polish press, Cardinal Stanislaw Dziwisz, personal secretary of Pope John Paul II, has proposed for Krakow to host World Youth Day 2015. Krakow will have to compete with candidates such as Lithuania and Mexico. However, there is still a good chance it will take place in the homeland of Pope John Paul II, the inventor of these youth meetings. The year 2015 will also mark the 10th anniversary of the death of Karol Wojtyła. For this, the Archbishop of Krakow has invited the Pope to bless the new Shrine of Divine Mercy. The nomination for Krakow was formally submitted to the Vatican, but the official announcement will have to wait until 2013 to discover the winning city.
Well, back in Rome, a couple of local men have moved one step closer to the priesthood. Gino Patuligan and Joe Zwasta were ordained as transitional deacons for the Diocese of Brooklyn, while both men are currently students at the Pontifical North American College in Rome. Gino is a native of St. Mary's Star of the Sea Parish in Far Rockaway. Joe, meanwhile, comes from Resurrection Parish in Garrison Beach. Both men will be ordained next June. And back here in Brooklyn last night, it was Faith on the big screen as NET held its second annual Faith Film Festival. Host Lorena George and producer Will Fonseca hosted the festival at St. Francis College in Brooklyn Heights. The films Hero and Stained took home multiple awards, and we would like to congratulate all of the winners. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Coming up, Brooklyn's bishop celebrates a milestone. I'll sit down with him to talk about his 8 years leading the diocese.
I started out in my first homily I gave when I was installed, speaking about the new evangelization. And I try to do everything that can support that.
Welcome back. Well, as we head into the Columbus Day weekend, and for some of us anyway, a nice long weekend, this week was a reason to celebrate for another reason. Bishop Nicholas Dimarzio celebrated the 8th anniversary of his installation as Bishop of Brooklyn. I had a chance to sit down and talk about all of that, and that's the subject of this week's Into the Deep. Bishop Dimarzio, thanks for being here.
Okay.
Well, this time around we're talking about, celebrating somewhat of a milestone in your time here, 8 years in October of being here in the Brooklyn Diocese. First of all, I guess I have to ask you, does it feel like 8 years?
No, it doesn't. That's quick, but very quickly.
You know, they say time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, fun.
So there you go. That's what we're going to chalk it up to.
I guess so.
It's not been a long span of time, but could you tell us, as we start off our conversation here, how things have changed, what the Brooklyn Diocese was like in 2003 and what it's like now, and how things have sort of changed over time.
Well, I think the diocese is a changing demographic situation, and even in 8 years, we see an influx of a lot of more young people that were living or working in Manhattan that are now living in our diocese. Presents a special challenge to us. We have a constant change of immigrants of different groups. We see neighborhoods changing. It is a place of great change. Therefore, it's not boring. We don't see the same thing all the time. We have new challenges, and it keeps you on your toes. So I think that's really characteristic of the diocese. Diversity, that's one of our greatest assets. It's one of our greatest challenges. And the changing aspect of things is also one of the great challenges we have.
Sure, sure. As you touched on those, the challenges and also the strengths of the diocese as well, how do we go about addressing some of the challenges that we have as a diocese, and maybe some of the things that aren't, we are maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball on, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you just kind of trying to catch up with where things should be.
Yeah, well, we're doing that through the 2 major programs. When we're looking at preserving the vision about the education, and also with Christ Jesus Our Hope when we're looking at the parishes. So those 2 things are very necessary. So if we're going to meet the future correctly, we need to consolidate, strengthen, and move forward. And that's certainly what has happened. I didn't know when I came that was going to be the major challenge right now, but it appeared fairly quickly that we had to do something along those lines. So I think we're in the process of doing that.
So going back in time a little bit here for us, I guess over 40 years now, when you were ordained a priest, did you ever believe that you would, in your wildest dreams, end up where you are or be the bishop of a diocese somewhere?
No. I mean, it's completely hidden from your eyes. No idea that would happen, nor did it even occur to me as years went on. It, for the most part, is kind of a surprise.
Yeah, it's you know, it's not something that you necessarily strive for. It just kind of
it happens.
It catches up. It happens. It catches up to you.
Sure.
Well, when of course we hope that you'll be celebrating many more of these times
so
here at the diocese. But when all is said and done, whenever that might be, what would you want your legacy to be here in the Diocese of Brooklyn?
Well, I started out in my first homily I gave when I was installed, speaking about the new evangelization. And I try to do everything that can support that. And I think that's it. I think we are in the age of the new evangelization. The new millennium has given us an opportunity to re-evangelize, to take outreach to those who are Catholics, who may not be practicing, and to share the good news, the message with those who are not Catholic. There's a lot of work to be done. I think if I can impress on the diocese and the time I have left in the diocese that the new evangelization is our program, and the program is the gospel itself, but represent it with new zeal, new methods, a new enthusiasm. That's what I'd like to leave as a legacy in the diocese.
All right. Well, Bishop Nicholas Dimarzio, thanks so much for being here.
You're
Congratulations as well.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here to sort of celebrate it right along with us.
Great.
Thanks. Stay with us. There's more currents ahead. When we return, walking the Camino de Santiago in the streets of Brooklyn.
We feel that we are following the steps of our people, our ancestors behind. It is meaningful to us. It's our faith.
We began tonight's show with a look at a new film about the spiritual journey that is the Way of St. James, or the Camino de Santiago. Well, as we wrap up tonight, we continue our coverage of Hispanic Heritage Month and take another walk that has close ties to the Camino. We didn't have to travel all the way to Spain to get a close look at this one, though, because it happened right here in Brooklyn. This summer on the Feast of St. James, the Cursillo Movement of the Diocese of Brooklyn said goodbye to its home in Cobble Hill with a procession through the streets of that neighborhood.
Tonight we gathered with the Cursillo Movement to really celebrate the spirituality of the movement, to celebrate the fact that the movement is moving to a new home, in East New York, in the parish of St. Malachy's, St. Michael. We gathered really to celebrate the feast of St. James, the Apostle, which is an inspiration for the Cursillo. And it was a joyful celebration. We celebrated what we believe, our faith in the Lord Jesus, which is at the very heart of the Cursillo movement. Ustedes, como cursillistas, han sido llamados por el Señor, como Santiago el apóstol, a ser sus testigos.
The Cursillo is a movement where men and women, we come to learn about the new evangelization. We learn how to follow Jesus' steps through the way and how to serve better in our church, in our community, as a follower of Jesus.
Basically, what we did here is imitation of the Camino, which is done in Spain for those who are faithful, the disciples, who really want to imitate through penance, through observance, through discipline, through prayer, an expression of a sacrifice. They walk distances, long distances. Some can walk as long as 30 days to Santiago de Compostela, where St. James is buried. We did a small Camino in imitation of what's done on the way to Santiago de Compostela. But here we did it from the Cursillo Center, the former Cursillo Center at the end of Congress Street, to the church here, which is about 3 blocks away. What we're celebrating is a transition. It was a pilgrimage of faith. For the Cursillo, for almost 40 years, was housed here in the center at the end of Congress Street, and that center is being developed, and we're moving to a new home.
It was a sad moment at the beginning because we sang one song that it was saying goodbye to the center. That was the last song, and we began to walk with that song, like saying goodbye to that center.
We are pilgrims here on earth. Our real home is heaven. And to walk is a beautiful way to remind us that our home is not here.
We feel that we are following the steps of our people, our ancestors behind. It is meaningful to us. It's our faith. Even though with the rain, you saw people with umbrella, they are just at the beginning, and it was so powerful. After we're done with the rosary, it was no more rain, and so we were able to walk without the umbrella. So it was really beautiful.
In East New York, we are going to be creating a regional plan for evangelization. The Cursillo has for generations now done that. So my hope for them is that they will be a partner in this work and they will be reinvigorated. They will find a whole new energy by moving on to this new home.
And we wish the Cursillo movement all the best at its new home in East New York. And just a reminder, the new film The Way, starring Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez, is in theaters now. It's in limited release right now. I'll have wider release a little bit later on this month. Steve Graydonis of he's one of the hosts of the net movie show, Real Faith. He's written a review of The Way, and we've posted a link to that over on our Twitter feed. And be sure to grab some popcorn and watch Real Faith a little later on here on Nets. They'll give you the lowdown on many of the films that are out in theaters now. That is Real Faith, tonight at 8:30 here on Net. Well, that does it for us tonight. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great Columbus Day weekend.